Today I'm really excited and happy to have Gabriel Allahdua with us today. He's a farm worker and organizer, as I mentioned, with Justice for Migrant Workers. He's originally from St. Lucia, but has found a home in Toronto, fighting for migrant workers' rights in Canada for the last couple of years. He is currently an organizer in the Harvesting Freedom campaign, which I'm guessing you'll tell us more about. And the campaign is fighting for migrant workers' right to access permanent residence in Canada. I'm not going to go into more depth in that because I think he's going to talk about that. So I'm going to bring up Gabriel. Thank you so much again. I know right now you're so busy, and I'm really excited to hear you talk.
Thank you, everyone. I want to start by asking a couple of questions. I'm hoping at the end we'll be able to answer these questions. Do you agree that there are sufficient resources for all our needs, everyone's needs, the whole country? Or do you think that they have enough for our greed? Do you agree that 10% of the population controls 50% of our resources? And 50% of the population controls only 10% of our resources? Do you think our success is possible in this world? Do you think capitalism and democracy, do you think that they can coexist to bring our happiness? These are some questions I want to... It's a while I've not been able to get good rest because I've been thinking about it. So if I fall asleep, no, it's because I want to give you a good answer. My name is Gabriel, as you said. I'm from St. Lucia. I've been a migrant farmer for the past 4 years. I've been working really some for Ontario Limited in the greenhouse production of tomatoes and organic sweet peppers. The truth is, farm workers are not being treated fairly. I'm hoping to spend some time to tell you more about it. And I'm hoping to spend some time to tell you more about the dark sides of capitalism. But to help me with the presentation, I want to introduce my colleague also. When I started with the first question, 10% controls 50% of the resource. That is for Mahatma Gandhi, I think I first came across that. She's from India, so I guess she brought me that quotation. So tell them what they are.
I'm Vasanti. I work with Justice for Migrant Workers as well, and part of the Harvesting Freedom campaign, which hopefully Gabriel will go into at some point. So what the work that Justicia does is we speak about a particular specific population of who come to work in Canada year after year and who are hidden away in farms and whose human rights conditions, whose legal rights, whose conditions in general, it's quite difficult for the average Canadian to even be aware of because they live in remote farms, removed from, not within in any urban area, and also they work way above 35 to 40 hours, sometimes 60 hours, 70 hours per week. And a lot of the agricultural laws do not apply to farm workers. So for example, they're not eligible for overtime, they cannot unionize. So even if they're working for 80 hours, they're going to get paid only for those 35 hours. They cannot organize themselves, they cannot bring their family members. And this is a program that has been going on for the last 50 years. The Seasonal Agricultural Worker Program in Canada started 50 years back with a treaty actually with Jamaica, in which an exchange was made that Jamaica would send its migrant farm workers here seasonally every year. So the temporality is quite an interesting aspect of this, because the fact because one of the words that you keep hearing about is that they're temporary and that they're seasonal. So they come here for just 8 years, or just 8 months, and then they go back. But no, a lot of the farmers, they come year after year after year, and they end up over the lifetime spending way more time in Canada than they even do back home. And Gabriel will talk more about his own story, about how he got into the program, and about how the conditions that farm workers face. But towards the end of the lecture, we also have flyers about the Harvesting Freedom campaign, which is a pilgrimage that we are taking all the way from Windsor to Ottawa. We started 3 weeks back at Leamington, Ontario, where Gabriel worked, and we are finishing in Ottawa next weekend. And we are stopping all the way through the entire agricultural belt from Leamington to Ottawa, stopping in at various parts and organizing farm workers to come together, and also making sure that the communities understand what is happening, where the food is coming from, and the issues about agricultural work in Southern Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you. To understand our story, I want to put it in context, and I'm going to read just a few excerpts from this, a brief history of capitalism. And then you'll see where our story, our pieces, we can never see the whole story, right? Where our pieces fit, right? So please allow me to read just a few excerpts from this, a brief history of capitalism. From the earliest city-states, the forces of empire have marched to take lands and resources and to impose their system of control. So from the earliest of times, people have been moving in to conquer lands and impose the system. This colonization of lands and people brought the city-states into conflict with tribal nations. The Roman Empire colonized most of Western Europe and occupied some regions for 4 to 5 centuries. So the Roman Empire is just one good example of there being a colonizer colonizing. Let us see what happens next. By the 5th century, the Roman Empire had collapsed. At this time, assimilated tribal chiefs rose to establish their own kingdom, leading to a long period of war and power struggles under feudalism. Under the church, the last remnants of tribal culture were destroyed. During the Holy Inquisition, millions of women were killed for being for being witches or pagans. And a couple of last things I want to read to you is number one is, as in World War I, the US again emerged more powerful, now challenged only by a greatly expanded Soviet Union. The one before the last, in 1989, the Soviet Union collapsed due to a convergence of economic, ecological, political, military, and social crises. With the demise of the only competing global power, the US began to occupy the oil-rich Persian Gulf, starting with the attack on Iraq in 1990 and 1991. And the last one I think I want to read is, on New Year's Day in 1994, Zapatista guerrillas seized 7 towns in the Mexican state of Chiapas. They were opposed to the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA. And they identified neoliberalism as the new ideologies of capitalism. Neoliberal. These are the issues we want to talk about today. Neoliberal. But one of the first stories I want to share, it goes to where we started, the lands that we started on. And I would like to refer my friend, okay, to tell you about a little about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the report, the call to action. I wanted to highlight just a few things from it to tell you these are the effects, the real issues of capitalism and colonialism right here on the lands that we stand. So
I think you had a speaker talk about the land that you live with, that we're standing on, and in terms of how early capitalism has basically created the country that we live in right now. That Canada is built on the foundation of colonialism and capitalism. So we would like to bring in the connections between the agricultural workers and the continued colonization of indigenous peoples. So with that, I'd like to take a few words from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada and what their calls to action has been. So if you see in the calls to action, there are two sections. One is legacy, and the second one is about the reconciliation itself. And it speaks to a lot of things, including the Declaration on the Rights of the Indigenous Peoples, the settlement agreement parties, equity for Aboriginal people in the legal system. But what two critical aspects is that Gabriel wants to highlight is the Church about apologies and reconciliation, in which the Commission calls upon the Pope to issue an apology to survivors, their families, and communities for the Roman Catholic Church's role in the spiritual, cultural, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis children in Catholic-run residential schools. And we call for that apology to be similar to the 2010 apology issued to Irish victims of abuse. But the Commission also calls upon the Government of Canada, to replace the oath of citizenship itself with the following. And the oath should be replaced by, I swear or affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, or her heirs and successors, and that I will faithfully observe the laws of Canada, including treaties with Indigenous peoples, and fulfill my duties as a Canadian citizen. So basically bringing in the treaties into the oath of citizenship.
thank you. Here you can see, related to the lands that we stand on, what is capitalism based on? Is capitalism based on fairness, equality, and justice? And modern day capitalism is in our midst, and it's reflected in government policies, in neoliberal policies. And when it comes to neoliberal policies, what is one example of a present day government policy that clearly suits this? I want again to draw our attention to my colleague to tell you some of the issues of present day capitalism right here, and how it's going to impact. Tell me whether it's positive or negative on our lives.
Okay, so this is from Bernie Sanders, US Senator Bernie Sanders' argument against the TPP, where he talks about the 10 ways that the TPP hurts working families. A lot of it is specific to the US, but it applies to Canada, and all countries, I think, will be part of this agreement. So some of the issues that he highlights are that the TPP will allow corporations to outsource even more jobs overseas. The sovereignty of the US, of Canada, and other countries will be undermined. Wages, benefits, and collective bargaining will be threatened. Our ability to protect the environment will be undermined. And food safety standards will be threatened. Prescription drug prices and the profits of drug companies will increase. Access to life-saving drugs will increase, and the top 1% will benefit at the expense of everyone, else, including Wall Street, Bay Street, and all the financial firms that have nearly destroyed the world economy just 5 years ago. And also, the TPP would reward authoritarian regimes. And specifically, as with many things that we know that deal with capitalism and colonization, there is no expiration date, making it virtually impossible to repeal the agreement once it comes into action.
So the question I now ask you, based on the possible implementation, I guess Canada is pretty on the verge of signing or implementing it, right? Would you be better off? Would your happiness, would your success, would our children's happiness and success be better off under the TPP? And what is the TPP, as I said? It is one of several governmental policies that is right here in our midst, right at our doorsteps. A while ago I referred to the war in Mexico, Chiapas region, because they were opposed to NAFTA. Is Canada better off with NAFTA? These are the arms, these are the steps, these are the policies that the government is taking, and are we better off? She just mentioned that with capitalism, the top 1% benefited. I'm a worker. I guess we are all hardworking people. Are we better off? Let me draw your attention now to another issue. We're going to take a ride. We're on a plane. We're going to go to Vietnam. After World War II, we know, I'm pretty sure you've heard of the US war in Vietnam, right? But listen to the effects. After so many years, over 40 years, let me see how long was that one. After 40 years, listen to the legacy of that. Can you believe that? Capitalism again. What is the US legacy in Vietnam? 40 years after, people are still suffering from poisonous chemical weapons created by Monsanto that were dropped there. 2 million people affected by Agent Orange. 80 million liters of Agent Orange was dropped. The air, the soil, the water are still contaminated. And right now we have the elderly taking care of the ill. And what are the issues that they face? Deformities, cancer, genetic problems. And imagine on top of that, a New York judge rejected a lawsuit against America. The legacy of war, the legacy of colonialism. Does capitalism guarantee your happiness, my happiness? Does it guarantee world peace? I want to draw your attention to another issue that is right here in our midst. I introduce myself as a migrant farm worker. I have a simple thing, which is my passport. Visit, I want you to associate this with me. Visit, we try to design it to look like a pumpkin. Visit, what does it look like? An apple or a tomato? An apple. I want to tell you a story. And it's existing, it's present right here in society. And this story is, behind every fruit and vegetable that you eat, you are eating injustice. What is the origin of these things? What is the problem? What is the cause of that? Is that the truth I'm saying? Is that a lie? I have this plan here. You notice it's difficult to get the whole root, right? Because it's so deep. Because that problem has been in our society for 50 years. How can you pull that up easily? So that reflects our problem, right? But the root of our problem, it's not the farmers. It's not the customers. It's not you. The root of our problem is the government. The root of our problem is the system. The root of our problem are the laws, the policies, the practices that the government make. Those laws, those policies, they make us vulnerable. Those laws, those policies that the government make, they empower farmers and employers to exploit us. I can tell you more about it. The truth is, and that's the real truth, and it's documented. All what I'm telling you, it can be backed up, right? The truth is, the system is driven by And it's also designed. It's designed and it's driven by these two forces, dehumanization and exploitation. These are the two things that drive it, the system I find myself. Number two, the government. This system I told that's driven by dehumanization, exploitation, is the government that really executes that makes it into reality. And how does the government do that? They do that by the laws and so on. And what about those laws? The laws, the Canadian immigration policy, it places me, a farm worker, into one category, and it places some other people into another category. What are these two categories? One is the family class. I call it the safe class. You're okay. And the other category that I find myself into is the economic class. And with the economic class, you're not okay. And I'll tell you what not okay means. The laws and the policies that government make, they empower this power is vested in the hands of employers to exploit this. I'll tell you more about it. This is the root of our problem. What is the root of our problem? The government, the system, the laws that they make. Now, what does the stem represent? I am here for three reasons. The stem, does my friend have any branch? No branch, right? But the stem, the branches, and the leaves. Listen to that. These are the three reasons why I'm here, and farm workers are here. I am here. The government making the laws and so on. And they decide that we are going to come here. We are going to bring these guys here for one reason. What is that one reason? That these guys are going to come to Canada to do the jobs that Canadians do not want. That's one. Do the jobs that Canadians do not want. But the government went another step. I'm going to bring these guys here to do jobs Canadians do not want to do, but with no rights to apply for status. And what is status in Canada? Status means rights. So the government is saying these guys are going to come to Canada to do jobs Canadians do not want to do, but with no rights to apply for rights. What does that say? You have no rights in Canada. What does that say? Can you give me another word for that? If you have no rights, does that make you a human? That is the arm of dehumanization that I'm referring to, right? With no rights to apply for rights. Would you ever associate that with Canada? Wouldn't you associate that with another distant land? And hear that. Hear the third thing. So the stem represents we are here to do jobs Canadians don't want to do. The branch, I don't know how the branch, but I'll take this as a branch, right? So those guys are coming here to do jobs Canadians don't want to do, with no rights to apply for rights. And the leaves here represents that I'm going to tie these guys to the farm. Guys that have no rights, I'm going to tie them to a farm with a tied work permit. What is that formula? You're tying somebody to a farm with no rights. What is that formula? What does that do? Does that make the farmer a good person? Does that make that tree a good tree to bear good fruits? And that's the truth. That's the truth. Nothing but the truth. I've told you about the tree. I want you now to picture 20 fruits. What kind of fruits that this tree will bear? And there are 20 fruits, right? And these fruits I call the 20 dark sides of Canada. Do you want to hear all of them or some of them? I don't know how much time I have, right?
It's totally up to you.
It's totally up to you. Do you want to? These are the 20 dark sides of Canada, I call them. These 20 issues, they do not reflect a modern Canada. These are issues I personally believe that you would not like your children, your brothers, your sisters to be associated with. You don't want your children to work in jobs that have these conditions. And what are those conditions? I can go through all of them, but for fairness, I guess, I'll tell you a few of them and maybe you can ask a few questions. Right? I'm going to start at the farmer's end. I'm at the farmer's end. At this end there, one issue is we have a tied work permit. I'm tied to the farm. What's the other issue I just told you? With no rights. Isn't that a serious issue? These are two. That's a farmer's level. And I can even add another one here. That same person I'm tied to, he controls your housing. The word control, what does that make you? Does that make you a human? No rights? And you're tied to it. What does that tell you? Is that Canada? That's at the farm level. I'm midway now through the 20. Would you believe me if I tell you that it is illegal for farm workers to unionize in Canada? I'm going to the end. My custodian, who's my custodian? The government. This year they said they're going to review the program. The word review gives you the confidence, gives me the confidence that all the stakeholders will be consulted. Huh? Review. But what happens in practice? They do not want to hear from us who are being impacted by the program. It is not being televised or even broadcasted on the radio that you can know what's happening. And the other interesting thing is, the subcommittee that's taking care of it, taking care of the review, the so-called review, they have so limited time to do a countrywide review. It's limited time. That's the government, but they use the word review, giving you the confidence that we're going to make things better. Coincidentally, on Monday the report was released. We went to the, strange enough, in Cambridge, that's the chairperson. Is it Brian May, if I remember well? We went to his office, but I guess conveniently we were told that he was in Ottawa. But his assistant, wow, I expected to hear things like, man, we're gonna attend to your issues, we're gonna bring real change. That's what I expected. But the way he spoke to us is like, we were talking to the opposition, we don't have power, we will try our best. That's the kind of response. Where's the real change? Is that democracy? The question is capitalism answering the question of fairness, equality? Is it really answering the question of happiness for everybody? Or is it just a tool to keep the top 1% on top and the majority down? I had my colleague to refer to the issue of the TPP. Our issues are related to government policies, the TPP, NAFTA. And what are the common issues there? With this, the impression I'm getting is like, we get the impression like TPP is trade, it's the movement of goods and services. But it's more than that. It is a case where power is given to those on top to make critical decisions. And what are those critical decisions? That the profit is first at the expense of workers. So working conditions and salaries and wages, all of that goes down and profit gets priority. The question is capitalism, is democracy bringing fairness, equality? Are these the answers? Is that the world that you want for yourself, for your children, for society? That's the question. This brings me to the issue of the natives. First time I'm coming across a Truth and Reconciliation Commission with 94 recommendations. That's a tall order. But it's a reflection of the depth of the system that we live in. The depth. It's not at the surface, it goes really, really deep. 94 recommendations. The question is, these problems, these stories started so many years ago. And look at that, we're in the year 2016. And we have not, is capitalism, is democracy addressing the issues? Is there fairness and equality for everyone? Is capitalism the answer? That is the question. The signs are really here. Are they the answers to society's problems? From the farmer's standpoint, from the farm worker's standpoint, my colleague told you that this year is 50 years that people come from Mexico. Roughly on average between 50 and 60% of the farm workers come from Mexico and Guatemala. They're Spanish, 50-60%. 30-40% are from the English-speaking Caribbean, like Jamaica generally has the lion's share, like 30%, and my country, St. Lucia, Trinidad, Barbados, St. Vincent, and the other English-speaking countries, we occupy like 10%. But this year, the program started in Jamaica. It's 50 years that these conditions, I tell you, they exist quietly among us, quietly. But the truth is, you know what capitalism tells you? Buy local. Are you not proud to buy local, supply local? I am proud to buy something local. But behind it, and that is the devil's side of capitalism. Behind that, what is behind that? 20 injustices. 20 injustices that you cannot see. Why can't you see it? Why have that existed for so long? The truth is, the moment you speak about these conditions, remember we have no rights. It's so easy. So much power is vested in the hands of the employers. It's so easy. The moment you speak about rights, they send you in a plane, send you back home. The question is, I have difficult working conditions. I want better conditions, but I risk going back home. What do you do? What do you do? That's a trap we find ourselves in. I want better conditions, right? I want better conditions. The moment I speak, they send you back home. And the countries where we are coming from, unemployment is high. The economies are not doing well. If Canada and USA is not doing as well as before, these countries, they cannot do better than them, right? It's not until the developed countries do well that our countries will do well. So what do? Do you speak for rights? Do you ask for better conditions in a country that preaches, what does Canada preach? Fairness, equality, justice, access. Isn't that what Canada is preaching? And look at that. We have been silenced because the threat of deportation keeps us quiet. That's the truth. That's the truth. But the question of the day is a new world possible? The question of the day is a fair world possible? The question of the day is, what can you do? What can I do to make a new world possible? These are the questions we need to answer, right? I have to turn the planet upside down now. You know why? Because the solution to our problem is the laws. And the laws are made by government. Government is always at the top, right? And that is why our caravan is going to Ottawa. Because that is where we need to get the laws to change. But the question is a new world possible? Can we get the law changed? Is a new world possible? That's the question. Is a fair world possible? That is why a small group of migrant farm workers and a small group of volunteers, they've come together and set aside a whole month of activities. And we are marching, both march and caravan, from Leamington, first of all to Windsor, and from Windsor all the way up to Ottawa. From the flyer that's just handed out, you can see that tomorrow it will be, tomorrow is it, the 25th? Where will we be tomorrow?
Here.
Toronto.
What a surprise.
Yeah.
Good planning.
Let me backtrack a little. Actually, today, my colleagues are they were in Hamilton at the farmers market, and right now they should be at the wine festival in Niagara St. Catherine's.
Then the
Right?
big march.
Yes. But tomorrow, let me say a little thing about tomorrow. Tomorrow, the day starts really early. Can you tell them the first activity?
Sure. So we are going to start our program tomorrow at the food center, which is with the food center terminal, which is right there off of the highway up to the. So that's for those of you who don't know, the distribution of vegetables in Ontario works under this hub system. So all farms, they come with their produce to this food center terminal, which is right here in Toronto, and then it's only and the sellers can only buy their vegetables and fruits and so on from this food terminal. So that's a place, it's a hub for both buyers and sellers for most of the vegetables and fruits and produce that is grown in all of Ontario, except for the really northern part. Almost all southern Ontario produce comes here. And and then Loblaws, Metro, Sobeys, everybody, and including small restaurants, they go to the food terminal to buy the produce in bulk for their event. So what we're doing tomorrow is actually having from 7 to 9, we are having an action at the food terminal, hoping to slow down the food terminal process, because you can see if you come tomorrow, you'll see a lot of trucks going in and out, and we hope to distribute coffee and pancakes to everybody who comes there, and also to the truck drivers and everybody who works at the food terminal, and make sure that everybody's aware as to where these vegetables and fruits are coming from. Like that, people like Gabriel are the reason behind why that hub even exists. So if you have the time, please to come tomorrow morning. There's coffee and pancakes. The action is from 7 to 9. Please come and join us. And in the flyer, if you go to the website harvestingfreedom.org, there's more detail. There's also a Facebook event just for this action tomorrow morning, which tells you like where you can park and where you can come and so on. So we hope to see a lot of you there.
Then that's now 2 o'clock. There's another activity at 2 o'clock.
At Ryerson, we are showing migrant dreams, and there'll be a panel discussion after that. And the third event is pretty cool too. Like we're going to this Black Creek Farm, which is a very holistic, food justice oriented farm, and they are going to be showing a second film, which is El Contrato, which is based on migrant farm workers in Leamington and their action about 10 years back. And there's going to be a discussion, and we are going to be trying to get migrant workers from around this place to come to that farm. And there's also going to be free food for everybody, and it's supposed to be a celebratory event as well. So please at least come for one of the 3 events. Ryerson is right around here, and the food terminal is even closer from this spot.
She still haven't answered our question. How do we change the laws, right? What can you do? What can I do? Is my world a fair world? Is the farmer's world, farm workers' world, a fair world? Is my happiness, am I happy in that world that I'm in? And if I am not happy, would your happiness be guaranteed? Back home in St. Lucia, I was a beekeeper. And we all know that we cannot study corporate. And Canada is known for cooperatives around the world, right? I think Canada, stands out in so many ways. People in my country, people come to Canada to study about cooperatives. But the interesting thing is, with beekeeping, you cannot study cooperatives without studying beekeeping, social insects, right? But you know what I learned? And I didn't know that. They're so well organized. I know the basic thing I learned is that they store food for the rainy day, the difficult days, right? I knew that. And everything at home, I knew that. But what I did not know is that the way they organize, they have very simple rules. Very simple rules. Not 94 recommendations, very simple. And only 3 simple rules. Very simple rules. And that is the point here. The point I want to bring. Life doesn't have to be complicated. We don't have one set of rules for one set of people and another set of rules and one set of records. Life is not so complicated. It's just to protect. That is just to protect 1%. That's why it's so complicated. But with equality, with fairness, it doesn't have to be so complicated. So the question is, we still haven't answered our question, right? How do we make our world, the farm workers' world, a fair world? How can we end that world, right? That is the question. I tell you one thing, that we've set aside 1 month of activities. She told you some of the activities today and tomorrow. And 3 objectives of that 1 month of activities, 3 objectives are: 1, to connect with workers, because the country is so big, and the truth is, which government will give you resources to go against them? Is that real? Is that the real world? Is that in the democratic country, communist country, they will give you resources to campaign against them? So the point is, the volunteers have very limited resources. And we are going against the laws of the land. How do you do that, right? How do you do that? We set aside 1 month of activities to connect with workers. That's 1. Also to connect with some of the unions, the sister unions and organizations that support and endorse our company, to connect with them. 2, to let the Canadian public, and that is why this activity is important to us, to let the Canadian public know that these 18th century working conditions exist right here in our midst. to let them know, and also to build solidarity, because we want, when we get to Ottawa on the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd of October, that we have enough support. We have enough support to push the hands of government. And when we get to Ottawa, with all this support, that the name Justin does not exist anymore, but it will be changed from Justin to Justice. That is what we're seeking. Justice and fairness. That is what we're seeking. And how do we intend to seek that? And the flyer you have there, at our website, we have one online petition right at our website, www.harvestingfreedom.org. There's an online petition. By you signing the petition, that is one little thing that you can do to push the hands of government to get the law to change. Another simple thing that you can do, to take part in our activities tomorrow and so on. If you check our itinerary on the flyer, as we move to Ottawa, you can invite your friends and so on. That's another simple thing you can do. You can also share this here, the online petition, with your friends and family. You can also use these fruits and vegetables at your dinner table to discuss with your friends and family that there's a lot of injustice behind those fruits that we take for granted, right? When we think of fresh fruits and vegetables, we think of good health, nutritious foods and so on. But also, there's some people, the people who harvest them, the world is not a good one. We need to end that world and make it a better place. What are other things you can do if you're really, really serious? If you're really disturbed about the conditions that exist in Canada, there are other things you can do. You can lobby your MP. Because it's the law, we want to change the law. We don't want them, when they get to Ottawa, to say they've never seen that card on the table. Give them the cards so when they get to Ottawa, they know what cards to play. Don't let it be news to them. Let them know that these issues exist. That is something that you can do. What else can you do? It's the end of the world. Do you want to end the world with me? Or do you want to create a new world? That's a question we want to ask. Is capitalism fair? Does it ensure my happiness, your happiness? That's a question. We are that young. What can you do to make the world a better place, a new world? Is it fair? To me, it's not fair. Is a new world possible? To me, it's possible. But I don't know. The question is up to you. In closing, I can end with a couple of things. There are lots of things I can tell you. On Mother's Day, on Father's Day, on Family Day, these are great moments in Canadian. These are great days in Canada. It's moments when you share the best things you have with your family, the people you love. That's a great point in anybody's life. But the truth is, whereas the Canadian family is happy to be with great company on that day, these are the saddest days and the lowest days in our lives. That's the truth. Recently was Labor Day, and for Labor Day, the hardworking people, they come together to celebrate the milestones that they've achieved, right? Better working conditions. On Labor Day, the people who need to highlight difficult working conditions cannot even come out to let the public know that. In Canada, of all places, when people are celebrating in Canada, that is when we are at our lowest. That is when the urge to come out is the greatest, but because we are vulnerable, difficult, because of the laws and policies, we cannot come out. These are the saddest points in our life. But the truth is, I'm going to tell you 3 things. There's so many things more I can tell you, right? Let me see if I can end with 3 things. The first thing is, Albert Einstein, he discovered the 8th wonder of the world, and I would encourage everybody to find out what is that 8th wonder of the world. I find it really interesting, and I hope you will find out what it is. But the important thing I want to tell you, he said, the world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but the world will be destroyed by you, by me, if we sit by and do nothing. 3 little boys who were kicked out of school in Italy, they said, how can you say you love your neighbor? How can you say you love humanity? How can you say you love people who are marked by unjust laws and do nothing to change for better laws? In closing, I'm going to ask you the question. Is a new world, is a fair world possible? Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? I know I have one.
No?
That acronym that you were using, the
TPP.
what does that stand for?
Oh, Trans-Pacific Partnership with, okay, NAFTA, you're familiar with NAFTA, right? Mexico, USA, Canada, NAFTA. They've expanded it now. They expanded to 12 countries. TPP, Trans-Pacific, and these countries, the other countries would be Australia, let me see if I remember them.
Vietnam, China.
China, Vietnam, New Zealand, more countries. So it's Trans-Pacific. So countries around the Pacific, right? 12 countries.
And it's a similar thing sort of to NAFTA, it's like a trade agreement.
That's what it is. Oh, by the way, I
It's a
can
bit
tell
more
you.
critical than NAFTA
Right.
because it takes there's lots of problems with it. One of the big problems is that there's no end date. Like NAFTA, at some point you can actually go back and make changes to it if you want, but not with the TPP. And also there are very few. Like NAFTA was openly negotiated, whereas TPP was actually negotiated. Nobody knew what was going to come out until the first draft was produced, and by the time, like, a lot of the conditions and negotiations had already been done. So yeah, there's a lot of tricky issues with the TPP, but people are if it goes through, then it's going to be like this giant treaty which is going to impinge on a lot of rights and make inequality worse.
I can add a few things to it. Strange enough, when your prime minister was in the US not too long ago, and even when Obama was here not too long ago, on both occasions, Obama admitted, I found that strange, he admitted that these trade agreements, they do not favor workers. Here's just one. Sanders said, here, 12 ways the TPP, 10 ways the TPP hurts working families. 10 working families. Remember, these policies, they favor the capitalists, right? Here's number one. Look at it. The TPP will allow corporations to outsource more jobs overseas. Overseas. He said, Bernie Sanders said, in Vietnam, 56 cents an hour for Vietnamese workers. What does that mean? You understand? You understand the repercussions for you, for your workers, for your children, and for, you understand? And these are the real issues. These are the arms of government. These are the policies that they have. Recently, the Canadian Post, they were negotiating, right? And one of the things that they're against is the privatization of the postal system. Did they privatize that? What does that mean? What did they privatize? Hydro? They're planning to? Well, these are issues, right? Privatization is a real issue. Trade liberalization, opening the doors. Like one of the issues I heard with TPP is that milk from the US would be allowed to come here. And in the US they use antibiotics, and in Canada that is not, it's a lot of issues. These are the hands of capitalism right here, right here. These are the hands of capitalism, right? And Bernie Sanders have identified 10 ways it will impact the working people. And as I said, lots of power is vested in the hands of those out there. Why? Not why, but their main focus is profit, profit, profit. That's the long and the short. Any other questions?
Yeah, I was wondering, is there anything simple that we can do in terms of buying products? That where can we get fair and just products in terms of, like a lot of people go organic, or you can go to farmers markets, but where can we go to purchase local fruits and veggies where we know that the workers were treated fairly?
Yeah, in fact, that's actually a
Does
very
not
tricky
exist.
question. No, in the Seattle area and Oregon, they're trying to come up with a new standard which says it's not just GMO free and organic free, but also with fair labor standards. But again, that kind of system has not it's still very limited. But there is the movement is slowly starting. But in Canada, there is no such system. But a little bit more so in the Pacific Northwest, they're talking about how undocumented workers are being treated. In the US, that's a big issue. But in Canada, there's no such. In fact, there's no difference even between large farms, small farms. They're all in terms of treatment of workers and the utilization of seasonal agricultural workers. It's pretty much across the board. So it's even large organic farms, small organic farms. They're all part of the same system, which is what Gabriel has been trying to say. That it is so systemic and so connected with immigration, with international with international agreements that's there with all these countries.
The truth is, last week I was on a panel, and there was one farmer, strange, who is fighting for fairness of farm workers. I find that strange, but she's an organic farmer. What did she say? She said, minimum wage that we work for, she does not support that. The working conditions, the 20 programs that we have, they are all unfair. But she faces pressure from other farmers because they see her as a black sheep. She's going against the system, their system, right? She said, I think during the course of this week, she was being, first time I heard that, she was being audited. And because she was paying her workers $14 an hour, I'm not too sure whether the word penalized, or I'm not too sure what's the right word, but she'd been identified. She's been singled out for going above the minimum standards. But the other strange thing I find, she used the word on the panel. Whilst we were on the panel, she said whenever they do inspection, she's always the inspections are very robust. She used the word robust. But I'm telling you the truth. For housing to be going through that kind of inspection, that's an exception to me. But the truth is, the housing that we face, the farm I work, 8 of us in a standard room. 8 of us in a standard room. I personally had to use earplugs to cut myself off to get sufficient rest. That's one. Generally, the housing that we live in is overcrowded. It's below standard, and it is not regulated. Generally, there've been, I can tell you extreme cases, right? There's a farm I visited, either Tilsonburg or Simcoe. It's a barn where animals live. They modified it so that 45 Jamaicans are living in there. There's no washroom in there. So when it's raining, whether it's snow, whatever, they have to go outside to get to the washroom. Other issues, that same farm, strange but true, all the issues are related, right? That same farm, whether they work 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, 14, 16, depending on the time, summertime especially, 14, 16 hours is not unusual, they only have one break for the day, their lunch hour. And they work in open fields, and you know, open fields, there's heat stress and some, oh my goodness. The truth is, these are slavery conditions. I can tell you so much more, right? Because this is a 50-year story. How can I say it in an hour or two, right? But the truth is, 18th century working conditions exist. These are slavery conditions. These are conditions, these 20 conditions, I call it the 20 dark sides of God. And as I said, the root of the problem is not the farmer that's a problem. It's the Canadian government, the system that they designed. It makes us vulnerable, and we've been exploited. It empowers the farmer to exploit you, and you have no rights. And in Canada, what is status? Status is rights. You have no rights. We have no rights. In Canada, of all places. In Canada, of all places. Any other questions? There's so many issues. You know, time is the issue, right? Don't tell me I did a good job, right?
Thank you so much. I think it's extremely brave, the work that you're all doing. I understand, and I mean, I find it kind of shocking that a lot of this conversation is fairly new to me as someone that is engaged in this kind of conversations in my job. So I mean, that is interesting in the sense that I believe, like the film that you mentioned that's showing later on, that was that censored? That first film?
The Migrant, El
Not
Contrato?
Migrant Dreams, or the one.
Yeah, that was. That was one of Ming Suk's first films.
Yeah.
I think it was her first film, and you should talk to her about the experience that you had in making that film, like how she had to hide the cameras, and
Yeah.
she made it in 2002, and it's now 2016, and not a single thing has changed. In fact, a lot of the farms, these farms that we're seeing as part of a caravan, like we're going to places where we haven't mobilized before. So we are seeing conditions that are even worse than what's depicted in that film. Like just yesterday, there was this farm which has been infected by one of the worst bed bugs infections that you can see, like the bunkhouse. Like the farmers had bites all the way through, and one of the workers who had complained, he's now being sent back. And it also speaks to a lot about how international this problem is. So, for example, it's not as if so the treaty, that the agreement that they have, they say that the sending country can send this liaison, this consular officer who's supposed to be at the places where these farms are. So where the Jamaicans are working, there's supposed to be a consular officer who's supposed to take care of the needs of his citizens, so to speak. But what you see in the movie and what we see every day is that in fact a lot of these liaisons, they really do not want their workers to be seen as troublemakers, to be seen as the ones who are complaining, because like, well, if they find out that Jamaicans are doing all the complaining, then they're going to go to Trinidad, they're going to go to Mexico. And so there is this whole race to the bottom that's happening amongst these countries as well, and in making sure that these countries, they don't lose out on the remittances that come from these workers. I mean, he hasn't spoken about the money that the workers provide to both Canada as well as their sending countries, like billions of dollars in remittances and billions of dollars in taxes that these workers pay, that they get no benefits from. They pay into EI, they pay into CPP, they pay into every labor law system that they have to, but they cannot avail of any of those services. No welfare. Even when they get injured, they are supposed to be eligible for healthcare here and not be sent back. But there's this thing this process that they call rehabilitation, which is basically like if you get injured, you get sent back, and then you have no access to healthcare at all. Like that's pretty much even a lot of medical associations have written reports on how they're unable to work with the workers, because before they can start offering them care, they're sent back and they're not able to work with the workers at all. And we're talking about serious, even like when legs are broken and hands are and the fingers being hurt, and forget about like long-term chronic issues like environmental hazards or long-term healthcare and like living under these conditions. And in fact, the farm that Gabriel is to work for, what is the name? It's been in the top 50 best employers,
best managed companies.
Best managed companies for the past
3 consecutive years.
Yeah, for 3 consecutive years. So that's a good company in a way, because they just have 8 people in the bunkhouse, not 33 like the farm that got burnt, the bunkhouse that got burnt down.
Yeah, but she said that's a good thing. But listen to that. But the farm I work for 3 consecutive years, they've been among Canada's best managed farms. We had no internet on that farm. So communication.
So this is not this is. When he says internet, it's not trivial, because for a lot of the farm workers, they cannot take any cable, they cannot take wireless plans. It's so expensive. So WhatsApp becomes the main way in which they communicate to their family members, and that is pretty much, in fact, that's one of the big things that has happened in the past 6-7 years, is that because of technology, they're at least having some access to the families back home. And before that, like the workers used to be like in El Contrato, if you see, the workers are completely isolated. But even this small thing, like they don't get access. Usually farm owners allow the use of the internet that's around there, but in his farm, they had no access to even WhatsApp. So even organizations like us, when we have to try to get in touch with them, it's really difficult, because like we have no other way. We can't even send text messages to them because they're so remote and removed from.
In the building where I live, there were 62 of us with 3 stoves, 13 burners. Getting access to the stove was a challenge. For me, my day started at 5 in the morning just to get to the stove. 1 television for 62 guys. Isn't that a fight? The only thing that kept us united was wrestling. Everybody loved wrestling. That's the only time there wasn't a fight. Although wrestling is a fight, but we were united around it. But you understand that? 62 guys, one television. How do you thank someone who every weekend would pick me up to take me to his home to use Wi-Fi? That's why everywhere I go, I try to mention Louis Zonta. Every Friday, for every weekend, he would religiously pick me up to take me to his home so that I could communicate with my son. How do you find people like that? It's not the kind of Canada that we know. But for this kind of conditions to exist, is that the real Canada? Is that the real world that capitalism, democracy is supposed to be living? That's the issue. Is our world fair? Shouldn't we bring that world to an end? That is why the topic is so important. Isn't that a world that should be ended? What can you do? What can I do? These are the questions. There's so many things that I can say, so many things. But when I told a friend, I went to Montreal and I met a friend. When I told him the issues that we face, you know what he told me? When you buy fruits and vegetables, because of the conditions that exist, he told me, quietly, because you don't know these issues exist, quietly, you're being nice, right? You're buying local, you're being nice. But you're taking part in polite genocide. Politely, you're contributing to something we don't know. So by buying fruits and vegetables that are harvested big on farms where migrant workers work under difficult conditions, polite genocide you're contributing to. Is that a fair world? Is that a fair world? Is that a fair world? That's a question. So quietly, these things are hidden behind buy local. Buy local. Any more questions? I'm open to. There's so many other things I could tell you. Hundreds of thousands of stuff, right? Yes?
I was wondering if I missed the beginning of your work.
No problem.
Do you also work with other seasonal workers in the West, like in the Calgary or in Alberta, that are dealing with different industries or with
Can you answer this one for me?
So
Because
they also work with the West that are different industries,
Yeah, for sure. Yes, in fact, So in fact, some of the other workers. So the live-in caregivers, they are migrant workers as well, but they are organized in one of our sister organizations, so to speak. But certainly, food processing industry, that's another industry that takes in a lot of workers. Hoteling industry, restaurant industry as well. We haven't been that successful with outreach in the restaurant industry because they don't have a program, like the seasonal agricultural worker program, this is basically organized exploitation in a way, like legal exploitation. Whereas in the other industries, it's even more. The exploitation is also it's an illegal exploitation. But the way the temporary foreign worker system works, that it takes in workers in various industries that are seen to have that they apply for as saying there's labor shortage, and some of the biggest industries revolve around food. So fishing in the east, anything to do with the fish and fish processing. That's a big source for migrant workers as well, where migrant workers work. So so we work with a lot of workers. And one of the big cases that we helped file a few years back at the Human Rights, where a bunch of women, migrant workers from I think Thailand and Mexico, they were working in a shrimp processing company, and they were facing daily sexual harassment and terrible conditions. But we couldn't, oddly speaking, we couldn't file a criminal case because the farm owner managed to escape any criminal proceedings. But we did bring in a human rights proceedings before the Human Rights Tribunal on the basis of discrimination, on the basis of the status. And we, after like 8 pretty much grueling years in which a lot of the workers were sent back, the workers won the case, and they won an unprecedented settlement at the Human Rights Tribunal, a settlement that has not been won by any group like this before. But that took 8 years, and there's almost very few people left behind to even avail of the settlement. So you can look that up to Pristine Foods. So that's not a agricultural, not the Southern Ontario agricultural.
I don't know if that would help to her question. We are affiliated to MWAC, right? You tell her what MWAC is, and
Yeah.
MWAC is.
So MBAC is a larger coalition that Justicia for Migrant Workers started a few years back, which is a coalition across all groups working on behalf of migrant workers across the country. And there's a Canadian coalition. So MBAC deals with Ontario groups, and the Canadian coalition of migrant worker organizations. It's a coalition of organizations that work with migrant workers across the whole country as well. So every group works in a few other groups as well, especially the West Coast, which do a lot of work.
Just a couple of things I want to add. There's so many pieces, right? Just a couple of things. One is the system I just described to you. It's a real system, but the truth is, as it is, some people benefit from it as it is. I want you for 1 minute to step out of your shoes and to step into these people's shoes. If you are standing in their shoes, would you allow the system to change? I want you to think about it. I tell you that because in the media, now that we have the caravan to bring out the issues, you would hear stuff in the media. But the truth is, whenever a lie, whenever a myth is repeated long enough, and even when the media picks it up, people generally would accept it as a truth. Oh, migrant workers will take the good jobs, and you'd hear these things. They'll tell you something. But for 50 years, have they ever told you that these people work under these conditions? They will never say that. That is the truth. You would hear stuff that would appear as truth. They would appear. But the thing is that, listen to that, anything the government tell you, anything I tell you, they're three sides. You can test it. My words are really nice words, right? But I told you, there's literature to back me up. And I can bring 1,000, 10,000 workers to back me up. I can bring 1,000 farms right now to back me up. Anything you hear from the government and from the media, ask them for backup. Test it. Have an inquiry, man. Do not just accept, oh, buy local. Buy local. That's a wall they build in to block your vision. Test it. It's not what they say. Test it. According to an average guy said three things. The sayings, the things that we say, that the government say, the doings and the happenings. Just test these three things. Let me give you one example. I mentioned it. The government said they're going to do a review. The word review gives you confidence. Oh, that's the best words you can think of. That's the saying. But how did they do it? How did they do it? It wasn't televised. We were not invited. It was quick time. Look at the doings. And look at the happenings. Look at the report that they submitted. It does not address our issues. But if you have to rest on just the word review, you feel so confident. You can even sit down in that soft, comfortable chair and think that everything will be taken care of. The government, right? Even the media too, you can test them. The sayings, the doings, the happenings. And I want to end on a little sad note. I have 2 kids. My son started college in the month of September. By the month of October, he quit college. My daughter, sometimes she would leave home for school, never go to school. How can I manage that situation, so being so far away from them? The truth is, the program separates us from our families. We're physically separated. You remember I told you we have no internet on my farm. That's reality. When my son dropped out of school, is that the formula for a better society? Or isn't that the formula for social ills and poverty? Can we ever get out of that trap? And the same Canada, the same USA, the same England, they open the doors for those that have the engineers, the qualified. They open the doors, and for those who are at the bottom, what they do, they leave them in a vicious cycle that they're always available. I need workers, I can get workers easily. That's why the TPP, because they know that they have a wide base of, to tap into. They're the ones creating it. In the Caribbean, we call that brain drain. They take the best from us, they send them overseas. But for me, it is called a barrel baby. We buy the things that we think that can replace love, and we put it in a barrel, in a plastic box, and we send it to our children. They see the barrel, the stuff, but we're physically disconnected. And the truth is, all these working conditions I just told you, the 20 difficult working conditions I told you, these things are nothing to me if the people that matter to me the most are standing in my corner. If your family is standing by you, you can go through hell and fire. You know that the best people are at your corner. But the program truly separates you from your family. So we are fighting two wars: difficult working conditions and worrying about our family. Is that a formula for a fair world? Is the world fair? Shouldn't there be an end to this kind of world? That is the question.
No, it's yeah. I guess I'm just wondering that, like, trying to figure out if there would be any way for kind of to do, like, for people not working on farms to have kind of like an outside-in approach that we could, like, go to a farm and, see if there's any way to help out or anything.
The truth is, I went to a farm, and at the entrance says you need a written permission from management to go to the farm. So listen to that. Let me go back to the basics. We have no rights, and we are tied to the farm. The farmer sees us as you're tied to him, and he controls you. You live on the farm, so they see us as property. That's the truth. How do you call it? You understand? That's what it is. It's just it's nice words, right? You have a work permit, but the tied work. You're tied. You're tied to the farm. What is that? Canada put it nicely, right? But the best chain I want them to put in my neck, the best shackles I want around my feet, is that chain called status. Status is the chain that helps us to get rights to this way. That's the best chain I want. I want to be a slave. I'm a slave in Canada, but without the shackles of status. I want that shackle around my hands. That's what I want. And more so, in a land that which is fairness, equality, access. In that land, that there's so many thousands of people for 50 years that are denied these basic things. And you know what? Just last month, maybe early this month, not too sure. Time is moving so fast for me. Somebody from Canada was in China telling China, oh, do something about your human rights records. And recently was in the US, what's saying? Talking about refugees. That the same rights that the Canadians have, I'll give it to refugees. We don't have a problem with that. But why make us an exception? Fairness, that's all we ask for. Fairness and equality. For 50 years we've been feeding the nation. Just treat us fair. That's all we ask for. Fairness and equality. So to us, status means fairness. To us, status means equality. To us, status means rights. That's what it means in Canada. It's the law that we have it that way. Fairness and equality. That's all we ask for. Fairness and equality. Let me give you another side, right? That's the Canadian side. Let me give you another side. Recently, 33 Jamaicans were living in a bunkhouse. The bunkhouse got burned to the ground. Even the basic things like the passport, the birth certificate, driver's license got burned. Jamaican guys. In every participating country, they have a government representative in Canada. The government representative came to the guys and tell the guys they would have to pay 173 Canadian to replace the passport. The government representative. In a situation where you've lost everything, what do you expect your government to tell you? Man, I understand your situation. Let me see if I can meet you halfway, right? You expect to hear something like that. But the government representative tells them they have to pay the full cost, 173 dollars. Through the voluntary group that we have, we're able to go over the air, the radio, and mobilize the public to call the consulate office. We had Jamaicans to call the government. And quietly, the Minister of Labour from Jamaica came up through pressure to tell the guys, okay, we gotta wait. The point I want to bring here is our government. Are they standing in our corner? Are they standing by us? Or they see us? How do they see us? They see us as, you see, the life of a government is 4 or 5 years in office. When they can tell the Jamaican public, oh, we have 10,000, 20,000 workers in Canada, everybody will clap. And we win $200 million, everybody will clap. That's votes for them. But which voter would ask them, under what conditions are these guys working? The voter don't. You remember what I told you? You need an inquiry mind. The politicians tell you one thing, but you need an inquiry mind to go behind. And that's the truth. The government that we expect to be at our side, they're not. That's our government. So you can imagine the Canadian government. So where do we stand? You can imagine our war. We're in a really, really, weird. I don't know how to describe it. But the truth is, which is what I like, Mandela said it. He said apartheid. He said slavery and all those conditions, they're all man-made and they all can be changed. That's what I really like about it. It can be changed. They are man-made. They're not natural stuff. They can be changed. But the question is, are you willing to change? As I'll just repeat what Einstein said, the world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by you, by me, if we choose to do nothing. Can you say you have love in your heart? And see people who are marked by unjust laws and do nothing about it? The question is a fair world possible? Is a new world possible? That's the question.